Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the AI Interconnect podcast, where we sit down with the builders, the thinker, and the game changers shaping the future of PropTech and real estate innovation. Today's guest is someone who's been on the radar for a while, John Siegman, the founder of PropertyLens, a platform that's helping redefine how we handle data privacy, compliance, and AI in PropTech. If you are in real estate data space, chances are that you have heard of John, or at least felt the ripple effect of the work of his team that is doing. And John, welcome to the show. I'm excited to dive here and having you.
Thank you, Laurent. It's great to be here.
Fantastic, fantastic, and it's going to be a nice conversation. Let's kick off with your story. Um, you've got pretty unique path um, into this world. Can you walk us through um, what brought you into PropTech and how the idea of property lens came to life?
Sure. So I've been doing data pretty much all my career. And previous to PropertyLens, I and my co-founder, Bob Grady, started a company called Hazard Hub. And Hazard Hub could tell you everything that was bad and going to happen to any property in the US. So it was a hazards database that we made incredibly affordable and incredibly accurate. And when we were doing Hazard Hub, every now and then somebody we knew was going to buy a house would call us up and say, "Hey, can you run my house? Tell me what you need. Tell me about it." And we would tell them what it was exposed to, what the replacement cost was, things like that. And then a couple of years before the pandemic, my daughter decided to go buy a house. And she would go out with a realtor on a weekend and they would look at 10, or so houses in her price range. And she'd come back and I'd ask her if she liked any and she'd give me an address or two. And I would run them through Hazard Hub and I would go, nope, not happening, no. Either it was an F for wildfire, crime was too high, it was, near a Superfund site or a toxic release facility, things that you just don't know. And so that went on for 3 weekends, about 24 to 30 houses in total. And then I get a call saying that a realtor wants to talk to me because I'm clearly keeping this sale from moving ahead. And, so we sat down and started going through the MLS listings, and I would run a Hazard Hub report, and it was just like, why doesn't this exist? So we went and finished up Hazard Hub. We built it up, sold it off to Guidewire Software, sat out our time. And while we were sitting out our time, one of the things that happened is, they always tell you, don't do anything rash after you sell your company. Well, all 3 of the co-founders and all 6 of our employees went out and bought real estate within the month after the sale. And again, we had the advantage because we could run a Hazard Hub report. We could run a replacement cost. We could go search for permits because we had access to all that information. But we realized that there just wasn't a Carfax for houses. And so we thought, well, we know how to bring all this data together. There's a lot of other things that we were able to sort of research that really aren't easily available to the public. And we said, we got to go do this. So we did. And that's PropertyLens.
Then, obviously, when you started PropertyLens, what other problem initially were you trying to solve, and how has that evolved since then?
So when you look at a real estate transaction, typically the least informed person involved in the transaction is the person who's putting up all of the money. The buyer just doesn't know. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what's really happened to the property. They don't know what events may have taken place, what permits have been pulled, even what's around the property. So, how many sex offenders live within a half mile? Nobody knows. And very few people have the resources or the skill to go and find those things out. And even if they did find those things out, what do you do with it? So we take all of that information and more, condense it down into a buyer's lens, which is a set of questions that the buyer should ask the seller, an inspection lens, all the things you want to make sure that the inspector looks for in addition to all of the things that they normally do, and an insurance lens that says, here's what's going to impact insurance on this property. So that's where we start. Then we do a lot of roof work, so you have a complete understanding of what condition your roof is in, because roofs are big expenses. And roofs in the US, in particular, are now being evaluated by insurance companies, and there are some insurance companies that won't insure the property if the roof is older than 10 years. So knowing those types of things, knowing that and of course that roof age depends on where you're at, because I'm in Southern California, my roof will last 75 years. It's concrete tile and it never gets hailed on. Brand new roof in Oklahoma, probably not going to be a brand new roof for long. So understanding what affects the roof, understanding all of the impacts. So lots of different things that go into the report. Knowing what's nearby. Is it urban, rural? Do you have access to public transit? What's the noise levels like? Are you affected by airports or highways or trains?
Wow,
All sorts of things that most people hopefully take into consideration, but if they don't, we tell them about it anyway.
that's amazing. That's unbelievable. Yeah, they must have a million different data points uh, everywhere. And what makes your approach to data privacy and compliance unique in the PropTech space?
There are no names attached. So we don't tell you who the current owner is. We don't tell you who any of the potential buyers are. We don't tell you anything that's in a PII type of situation. All of the data is either data that we create or data from public sources that we make usable and understandable. But even some of the public sources will have who the owner is and things along those lines, and we just don't expose that. There's no need for it. It's like knowing who the owner of the used car was when you get a Carfax. That doesn't help you any, so they don't give you that information. If you're going to buy the house, you're going to know who the owner is. But that's a commitment. And potentially you might, want to explore with that person deeper. But we don't give that information up because there's no reason to. You
Of
get the
course.
report, you get a complete understanding as best as we can do of the property itself, what's going to affect the property, all of the things that are key to making a more informed decision. And what we've seen so far is that anyone who uses a PropertyLens report tends to save about 2.25% off the purchase price of the house.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And with your ideal clients, beside private owners, but could it be platforms or property managers?
Oh, absolutely. We've had customers who have a real estate portfolio, and so they want to know all of the things associated with their portfolio, all of the risks associated. We've had realtors who consider it a competitive advantage to offer the PropertyLens report during open houses and things like that as a thing that separates them from other houses. Well, because if the house has nothing to hide, you should tell everybody it has nothing to hide. Clearly home buyers have been interested, and we're getting a little bit of interest on the insurance company side because we give a very complete picture of the property that they would be insuring. So it's a large range of customers, from large institutions to individuals.
Wonderful. Yeah, makes sense. Definitely. That's wonderful. Let's zooming out a bit. What are some of the big shifts you're seeing right now in the PropTech landscape, especially around AI or privacy or regulation or to automation, maybe?
Okay. Well, from a regulation standpoint, the biggest effect has been the NAR lawsuit, right? The separation of buyer and seller agent fees. And so I think there will be an uptick in individuals choosing to go without an agent. We would never recommend that, but we see it happening. And so those are people that are going to need to have a lot of resources available to them to go through the process, whether it's the software and paperwork necessary to do it, whether it's a PropertyLens report to understand what they're buying, whether it's hooks into escrow companies so they can close escrow, things like that. So I think that's going to have a huge impact. I think for buyers agents, they're going to need to sort of up their game a little bit to differentiate themselves from other buyers agents. On the seller side, I think sellers are going to see a tightening of disclosures. Some states have extensive disclosures. Some states are still buyer beware states. And I think you're going to see a tightening of those disclosures. The only problem with the disclosure process is it typically comes way late in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's embarrassing. Sorry. It comes late in the process. So when you are looking at a house, if you're concerned about flooding, you don't want to know that it's in a flood zone after you've fallen in love with it. You want to know it's in a flood zone before you fall in love with it.
Makes sense.
If you're concerned about any other hazard, you want to know that up front. You don't typically get that in the process until the very end, and in some states, it's not disclosed at all. As far as privacy goes, I think we're going to see, most things are pretty private. I mean, the recording of the deed is public. Who owns the house is public record. I think for people who don't want those things disclosed, they'll move into an LLC situation or something along those lines. But that already exists. So if you want to be private, you can. But I don't see a lot of the typical privacy issues that you see in direct marketing or in the credit aspect of things applied to real estate. It's not as much of an issue as it is in other industries.
How do you think AI will change the compliance conversation over the next few years?
Well, we use AI. We use a lot of AI
Uh,
in analyzing the data, in creating the buyer lens, the inspector lens, the insurance lens, um, looking to pull facts out of uh, very narrow areas. So I think, AI is definitely going to have a place in real estate and PropTech. And I think what you'll see is it applied to getting a better understanding of property, of the areas. Um, and I think it'll also be applied to, having more intelligent chatbot conversations potentially about a house. So where, the real estate agent may or may not be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're staring at a listing, but you may have questions and their chatbot may be able to answer those questions or at least point you in the right direction until that realtor wakes up to answer the questions directly.
yeah.
So I see that. I see AI being applied to the application process, the loan process, making things easier for the buyer and the seller as far as processing all of the paperwork associated with a real estate transaction. I think things will just get smarter and easier.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Moving on to challenges, and one of the things we always like to dig into is the hard stuff. What are the bigger challenges you are facing right now as a founder, or even within your client base?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we face is getting into the market. When Carfax first came to the marketplace, no used car dealer wanted a Carfax report. They may still not, because it told the buyer, yes, this car had been in a wreck. This is what has happened to it. Is it well maintained or not? And that's, what our PropertyLens report is doing. It's potentially slowing down the sale. On the flip side, it's also potentially keeping the realtor from getting sued because it's a full disclosure report from an independent third party that says to the buyer, here's everything we know about this property. Here's everything you should ask about this property. And so I think, once the market starts accepting the report, we'll see it hopefully become ubiquitous. Every house listed should have a PropertyLens report. And you'll see, much more transparency in the real estate transaction. And you'll see satisfaction rates rise. You'll see people truly disclosing everything that they know. And you'll see, fewer post-sale lawsuits associated with it because everybody knows everything about the property. But getting into a new market, bringing something like this forth to market is definitely a challenge. I think, there are other data associated challenges. Some states are better than others. Some counties are better than others. But overall, anytime you introduce a truly new product or concept into the marketplace, there's always doubts. And so, what we've done to allay those doubts is every one of our reports comes with a money back guarantee. If you don't like the report, we'll give you your money back. Which I think very few people would be willing to do, but we're out there doing it.
That's right. That's right. Um, Moving on, What are the pain points your clients are expressing most often?
The pain points that our clients express most often is that they find out things, for previous houses after they bought the house that they wish they had known previous to buying it. It might not have stopped them from buying the house, but they would have known those things were applicable. And so if you know that you're going to have to replace the roof in 5 years or 3 years, that's a huge heads up as opposed to finding out
Of course,
3 years later after you've moved in that,
of
oh, I've
course,
got a $20,000+ expense to replace my roof. So understanding the systems, the age, the house, all of the factors involved. Um, most people, for example, look at houses on Saturdays and Sundays. Traffic patterns are significantly different on the weekend than they are during the weekday. Um, knowing that certain things are near or far, also important. A lot of different things that people wouldn't take into account, we attempt to take into account so they have a much better understanding. And I think that's the biggest problem that we're solving is that people don't know what they don't know and they don't know what to ask. And so we provide a lot of information that they don't know and we give them all the questions that they should ask so they're a more informed buyer. And if they're, still buy the property, they'll be happier with it because they knew all of the things that they should have known up front instead of being surprised on the back end.
of course, of
So we're
course,
just trying to make home buyers sleep better at night.
of course. And you're right. They have no idea what to ask, and they they have no idea what could happen if you don't bring them the right questions. Uh, they would never have thought about it. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Um, uh, Moving on to your vision of the future, looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, what's next for you and Property Land?
So we're working right now on a cost estimator. So, when you move into a house, there are things that you were just normally going to do, paint, carpet, and change a few things that happen typically within the first 6 months of moving in, right? That's great for, contractors and Home Depot and everybody else involved in the new mover event. But people don't understand that systems age. And depending upon the age of the system in the house, you're going to have expenses you might not have planned for. And so we developed a cost estimator. It will roll out in May. It will be part of the PropertyLens report that says,
Maybe.
here's what you can expect on a high, medium, and low standpoint for expenses for just typical house systems over the next 2 years. Because we want to help people budget better. Because a lot of people stretch to buy the house that they're moving into, and then something that comes up could be, detrimental to their financial well-being. We don't want that to happen to them. We want them to have even more knowledge. And, hopefully position themselves a little bit better in the negotiating process. So that's coming forward. We continue to build new and different data sets that all affect the, well-being and the general livelihood of the neighborhoods that the houses happen to be in. We continue to refine all of the hazard models And all of this just naturally rolls into the PropertyLens report. We just released new pricing. So the bundles are set at 1, 5, and 10. So, 1, if you're gonna, you've narrowed the house down and you know exactly what you want to buy. 5 for, we've got our 5 favorites. And then for the people who are just starting out on the journey, since most people look at 10 houses, it's a 10 pack, so you can sit there and go, okay, now
Okay.
let's look at all of these houses across the spectrum and really understand what we're doing. And then for agencies and insurers and things like that, we have special large volume pricing, as well as if they want, all of the reports are API driven, and all of our APIs are available for licensing. So somebody can bring the data into their own reports. And then another thing that we're looking at is putting a front end onto the application that will allow somebody as they tour a house to take pictures, examine the appliances, give a few pieces of information that we will then pull back in and update their report on that property with more current information that will help, again, get into the cost estimations, replacement times, things along those lines. So a lot of different angles, all in play, all current. And, as our customers, as we advance the report, our customers just get all the advancements.
I love
So
it.
lots of stuff happening at property.
Okay, that's great. Then new features. It could be for tenants as well. No, not only buyers, renters.
Oh,
No.
absolutely.
Okay.
The renter
States
market, you should
for.
know if you're
Mm,
renting a
please.
house, taking a look at, everything that's around.
Yeah.
But also just for homeowners,
Yeah.
um, to understand what's part of the process. We will be introducing a homeowner portal, probably in about 2 months, where you'll be able to claim your house. Don't even have to buy a PropertyLens report, but it'll give you a place to upload all of the receipts for all of the work that's been done. So you can have that to be tracked. And then when it comes time to sell your house, and it always comes time to sell your house, whether it's this year or 20 years from now, you'll have a work history loaded that will increase the value of your property. So people will know what's been done when.
Makes a lot of sense. I love it. This is great. Um,
So that's
th-
what we're doing.
yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And then new feature, maybe any new partnership in the pipeline,
We're starting talks
if you
with
can disclose.
a number of different people. We've got a couple of contracts, one signed with a home warranty company, one signed with a um, provider of, leads for plumbers and contractors and people to actually get work done so people can have a single source for that. And then we've got other partners that are providing different little pieces of data that they specialize in. And, looking again to just continue to bring information into the report that can help a potential home buyer make a better, more informed decision about where they're going to live.
Okay. Do you see Property Lens evolving into a larger ecosystem or staying tightly focused?
I think there are avenues for us to go down. I think it's a little premature to really say which ones could happen, but I think because a lot of the data that we collect tends to end up in inspection reports. We can pre-populate most inspection reports with all of the data. So saving time from an inspector standpoint, improving the inspection process. I see that as a potential. I see, the unagented home buyer potentially being able in the future to push a button in PropertyLens and execute an offer for a house. I see a lot of different potential avenues. I can see tighter relationships with the portals that are doing all the house listings. Lots of different relationships. We have a relationship with a local company here in San Diego called the Quickfire, and it's in getting the house ready to be sold or getting the necessary repairs after an inspection done so the sale can go through. There's just a lot of potential partnerships, and we're open to talk to anyone and anybody. We're happy to help.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. All right. Before we wrap, let's hit a few quick questions. Just say whatever comes to mind. One book or podcast that influenced you recently.
Recently, it's not recent, but personally, The Tao of Pooh, which is. But from a more recent book, there was a book about how Netflix came to be, and I can't remember the title of it, but it's the story of Netflix and them sending out the discs and things along those lines, and it was a really great introduction to, hey, if you've got an idea, go out and execute on it, and don't let people tell you can't do something.
That's true. Yeah, amazing adventure. A founder or company you admire right now?
A company I admire right now, all of the.
Or thought leader?
I think Homes.com. I think they've done a great job with their advertising. I think they've picked a very unique niche in the space. I'm a big fan of Redfin, and I like what Rocket Mortgage is doing. So I think that's a great relationship. And then, I think some of the larger real estate brokerage companies are doing some pretty interesting things.
Interesting. Very good. Your favorite productivity tool or app you use every day?
Slack.
With your team. Okay.
It's it's the advanced instant messenger.
Yeah.
It keeps our team is very dispersed, and it keeps everybody together. Gets quick answers. So from a productivity standpoint, Slack and Google Calendar.
That's right. I'm with you on that. And one prediction for the PropTech industry in the next 18 months. You see anything moving?
I see for the next 18 months,
Or 2 years?
I'm hoping that interest rates drop a little bit and sales pick up. We just had,
That's true.
still over 4 million houses sold, but that is a very small market compared to what is normal. And I think that what we will see, if it stays tight like that, is you'll see some more mergers and acquisitions, just because the size of the market is currently smaller than what most people are looking for. for us, I think it's even more important because, for those sales, people just need to be even that much more dialed into what they're buying.
Makes sense. John, this was outstanding. I really appreciate your honesty, the clarity you brought to this conversation. And before we wrap, where can listener connect with you or learn about PropertyLens?
Well, you can find us at PropertyLens.com, certainly. And then my email is just John, John, at PropertyLens.com. So happy to take anybody's queries, answer any questions anybody might have about what I said. It'll be interesting to see how this comes out. And,
Yes,
if anybody's looking to partner or looking to get reports in bulk, we're happy to help.
that's fantastic. And for those listening, if this episode helped you think differently about compliance, privacy, or prop tech innovation, share it with someone building in the space, and that's how we keep those ideas moving forward. And John, thanks again for being here. This was a pleasure, and hope and see you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurent. The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, we off. Okay.